Canning mistake number 6 is using pressure cookers instead of pressure canners. A lot of times people confuse pressure cookers and pressure canners, and it's very important that you use a pressure canner instead of a pressure cooker. Now, there are some types of pressure canners that are also safe to pressure cook in, but they need to be not just a pressure cooker. They need to also be a pressure canner. So there are a couple of primary differences between pressure cookers and pressure canners. Pressure canners have minimum size requirements. Now, one reason that I chose the Nesco canner as an electric canner is that it meets the minimum size requirements that the USDA puts out, which is a minimum of 4 quarts or 4 pints. And so it holds enough that it is the right size. So even though it's small, it can be used as a pressure canner. And it also has other safety features that make it safe for pressure canning. But some pressure cookers are small enough that they simply would not hold in the heat long enough. The heat would dissipate. I talked about not hurrying up the cooling down process. If the canner, or the cooker rather, cools down too quickly, then you're not going to process the food for the right amount of time because it cooled down too fast, and that makes it unsafe. So a smaller unit is not as safe as one that is larger that's going to hold in the heat for a longer period of time. The other big difference between pressure cookers and pressure canners is that pressure canners regulate the amount of pressure. So as I've mentioned before, on the Nesco canner, you have a black valve and you have a green valve, and you depending on your altitude, you choose which valve to use. And that is because it needs to maintain a certain amount of pressure. If you're using a stovetop canner, such as I have a Presto stovetop canner, there's a different weight that you use. You would use 10 pounds of pressure for altitudes of 1,000 feet or less, and 15 for 1,000 feet or higher. And so you need to make sure and use the right pressure regulating valve, and the canner maintains that amount of pressure. A pressure cooker is not intended to maintain that same amount, the right amount of pressure, and so it won't be safe to use for pressure canning.